Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Last night saw the third and final TV debate between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton ahead of next month's election that will see one of them becoming the next US president. It's been an ugly contest so far, and things didn't get any nicer when the candidates met in Las Vegas.
We have to have strong borders. We have to keep the drugs out of our country. Right now, we're getting the drugs, they're getting the cash. But we have some bad hombres here, and we're going to get them out.
I don't want to rip families apart. I don't want to be sending parents away from children. I don't want to see the deportation force that Donald has talked about.
I don't know Putin. He said nice things about me. If we got along well, that would be good. If Russia and the United States got along well and went after ISIS, that would be good. No puppet, no puppet.
And it's pretty clear.
You're the puppet.
It's pretty clear you won't admit
No,
that the
puppet.
Russians have engaged in cyber attacks against the United States of America, that you encouraged espionage against our people.
Those stories are all totally false. I have to say that. And I didn't even apologize to my wife, who's sitting right here, because I didn't do anything.
Asked Bernie Sanders who he's supporting for president, and he has said,
Which is
as
a
he
big
has
mistake.
campaigned for me around the country, you are the most dangerous person to run for president in the modern history of America. I think he's right.
That you will absolutely accept the result of this election.
I will look at it at the time. I'm not looking at anything now. I'll look at it at the time.
Donald Trump there from the debate. We're joined now by the pollster and Conservative peer Andrew Cooper. Welcome to the programme. Well, as it stands now, take us through the polls, particularly of those swing states, because it's all about the Electoral College and who reaches the right number or gets within spitting distance of it and can't be caught. It's Hillary Clinton's, isn't it now?
If we believe the polls, if the polls are right, it's Hillary Clinton's. She's led for 82 days in a row in the polls. And over the last 2 or 3 weeks, we've seen a big movement in her direction in those key battleground states. Not only looking at the headline numbers, kind of locking down some of the classic swing states like Florida, North Carolina, but actually starting to expand her map into states which the Democrats wouldn't have dreamt of being competitive in, like Utah, like Texas, like Arizona. But, you know, we just lived through a referendum here where the polls were wrong. We were through a general election where the polls were wrong. The public polls in America don't have a brilliant track record. So there is that nagging doubt.
You think there's still that many shy Trump voters, if that's not a contradiction in terms, who could come out at this stage, people who don't know who they're going to vote for?
One of the big challenges that pollsters face is trying to estimate which people will actually vote. And in America particularly, they base those judgments on past voting behaviour. Now, one of the things that happened in our referendum was that 2.8 million people who hadn't voted in the general election and usually don't vote came out and they voted leave. If in America there's a huge bubble of basically angry old white men in Rust Belt states who don't usually ever vote and are massively weighted out of the public data. So those polls only need to be wrong by 3.5%. And suddenly what looks like a runaway Clinton landslide is much more competitive.
Did you watch?
No. It was the middle of the night, wasn't it?
I
watched the clips.
It was the middle of the night.
I'm still fascinated by these hand movements.
Yes.
What is all this business?
Well, you'll have to ask him, of course. But yes, it's certainly been taken. No, I don't think you will. I mean, watching the debate from here, the whole debate, the presidential campaign. What's your view now? We're this close to the poll itself. Clinton has been a very unpopular candidate. We've seen, again, a very divided nation. What are your observations?
Well, I mean, American politics tends to set trends which then sort of wash across the Atlantic. And so I'm afraid the main conclusion I derive is that the ever more nasty, vituperative, personal sort of character assassination, which has distinguished this presidential campaign, unless we do something actively to avoid it, will become increasingly the kind of character of elections on this side of the Atlantic
Why?
as well.
I mean, Donald Trump is something of a phenomenon, good or bad, depending on your viewpoint. But he is not someone that you can compare with politicians here.
No, of course not. No, in that sense, he might be a one-off. I don't know. I mean, even in the time I've been an MP now for 11 years and in politics for a bit longer than that, even I've seen here in the UK that there's been a trend towards playing the kind of man or the woman rather than the ball, which has got ever more kind of pronounced. Maybe it's because it's effective. I mean, slagging people off for who they are, what they look like, or what the sound of their voice is might just resonate more in the voter's mind than having some pointy-headed discussion about local government finance. I don't know. Whatever reason, it does seem to be increasing, and it does make politics. It does make politics ever more kind of vituperative in tone. And I hope we can avoid that, because I think the tone tone is massively important in life generally. People don't actually listen to every syllable and consonant of what politicians say. They do pick up tone.
But do the debates make a difference then?
I mean, they have done in the past. The history of American elections is that over the last 4 weeks, there's almost no movement at all. So, I mean, no challenger has ever closed a gap of more than 4% over the last month. So the polls don't move very much after the first debate. I think the truth is, in as much as the voters watch these things and are paying any attention, the basic characteristics of these two people was priced into it a long time ago. The fact that Donald Trump is a horrible man who says horrible things has been factored in one way or the other a long time ago for most people.
But in a way, the impact that he felt was after the tapes of him making those lewd comments about women, and also the fact that the Republican Party does seem to have just cut him loose.
But in a sense, the worry about that is, does that deliver his message for him? His message is, I'm not like them, I'm not a normal politician. It's a similar dynamic to the referendum. It's the uprising against the experts, it's the uprising against the establishment. And I think the parallel, which is worrying in terms of a carryover to Britain and to European politics, is the bitterness and the depth of the division, that it's such a deeply divided country, and the enmity and the fact that the two sides find it impossible to see the world from each other's point of view.
But isn't that the problem, that polarising politics in the way that these two have, and Hillary Clinton has too, is the issue, isn't it? Rather than saying it is all about an uprising against the establishment and, poor old establishment.
Yeah, no, I think, look, this polarisation towards the sort of populist extremes on both right and left, it's not just an American phenomenon. From Podemos to Geert Wilders, from Marine Le Pen to Viktor Orban, you see populism now rife across Europe. I've just written, or tried to write, a book about this, is how does the moderate centre make itself heard at a time when everything is being pulled to one extreme and the other. And I think it's a terrifically important challenge for us to grapple with, because if we can't make moderate politics attractive and compelling and emotionally compelling again, we're constantly going to be sort of hijacked by a roving cast of populists on both right and left.
Who's going to win?
Hillary Clinton.
Right, that's good. At least you've managed to come out firmly and say one thing and not the other. Andrew Cooper, thank you very much.
Their last clash before the election, and Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump were not holding back. Kylie Morris was there. She joins us now from Las Vegas.
After a very long night in Las Vegas for the third and final presidential debate, Donald Trump's campaign, you might think, could be suffering a bit of a thumping hangover. There were scathing personal attacks from both sides of the stage, but there was one very important comment that's dominating the headlines. Mr. Trump's refusal to say whether he'd accept the election result if he loses. Now that, said Hillary Clinton, was horrifying, an attack on the very cornerstone of American democracy. But this morning, Donald Trump has added yet another episode to this saga. Let's begin, though, with the moment that sucked the air out of the room last night.
It takes two to make a thing go right.
Come on. I want to ask you here on the stage tonight, do you make the same commitment that you will absolutely, sir, that you will absolutely accept the result of this election?
I will look at it at the time. I'm not looking at anything now. I'll look at it at the time.
The moderator follows up just to remind Donald Trump how American democracy normally works.
But, sir, there is a tradition in this country that the loser concedes to the winner and that the country comes together in part for the good of the country. Are you saying you're not prepared now to commit to that principle?
What I'm saying is that I will tell you at the time. I'll keep you in suspense.
Well,
okay?
Chris, let me respond to that, because that's horrifying.
In the spin that followed, everyone clamoured to understand what just happened. Here's how Sarah Palin explained it.
He was suggesting that, hey, if it's a legitimate election, if the votes are, if everything's fair and square, of course the result of the election will be accepted. However, we have to make sure that the most sacred trust that the people have to cast their vote, to elect their government, that sacredness is being upheld, that it's respected.
But is it fair dealing from him? He's saying, go out and vote and I'll work out after the fact whether or not I accept your judgment.
Well, I think we're going to, first of all, we're going to win, okay? But it is fair to say that, unfortunately, both sides of the system, Republican and Democrats, it affected our democracy, pay to play, all these things. Mr. Trump is the champion to tear this down.
Donald Trump, the great disruptor of democracy, is a hard sell for a presidential candidate, and his campaign manager knew it.
Can you just clarify for us, is he not going to accept the outcome of this election?
She may have preferred another question, but she couldn't avoid the issue wherever she turned.
And the election process itself, I'm just asking you.
Al Gore did not accept the results of the election, and he said he would. He actually conceded to George W. Bush on election night 2000 and then called to retract his concession, and you know what happened next. The rest is history.
For the sake of our unity as a people and the strength of our democracy, I offer my concession.
In fact, back in 2000, Al Gore conceded after a failed legal challenge based on a close result in Florida. He did not declare the electoral process rigged before the fact. And that's why Donna Brazile was raging on the other side of the room.
As Al Gore's former campaign manager, I was shocked by the assertion that he alone would make the determination of whether or not he was the winner or the loser. The American people in our form of democracy will ultimately have the last say.
It all could have been so different. At the start of the debate, Donald Trump was composed, even measured, but his opponent appeared to get under his skin when the subject turned to Vladimir Putin.
I don't know Putin. He said nice things about me. If we got along well, that would be good. Look, Putin, from everything I see, has no respect for this person.
Well, that's because he'd rather have a puppet as president of the United States.
No puppet.
And it's pretty clear.
You're the puppet.
It's pretty clear you won't admit that the
puppet.
Russians have engaged in cyber attacks against the United States of America.
Do you condemn any interference by Russia in the American election?
By Russia or anybody else.
You condemn their interference?
Of course I condemn. Of course I can. I don't know Putin.
Donald Trump and the moderator drew on WikiLeaks disclosures from hacked Democratic emails to expose Hillary Clinton last night, prompting fiery exchanges on stage.
Secretary, please let Mr. Trump speak.
He's unfit, and he proves it every time
You
he
are
talks.
the one that's unfit. You know, WikiLeaks just actually came out. John Podesta said some horrible things about you, and boy, was he right. John Podesta said you have terrible instincts. Bernie Sanders said you have bad judgment. I agree with both.
Well, you should ask Bernie Sanders who he's supporting for president, and he has said,
Which is
as
a
he
big
has
mistake.
campaigned for me around the country, you are the most dangerous person to run for president in the modern history of America. I think he's right.
When the conversation turned to Aleppo, Donald Trump tried to blame the crisis there on Hillary Clinton's failures as Secretary of State.
Aleppo is a disaster. It's a humanitarian nightmare, but it has fallen from any standpoint. I mean, what do you need, a signed document? Take a look at Aleppo. It is so sad when you see what's happened. And a lot of this is because of Hillary Clinton.
On foreign policy and the economy, Trump revisited his strongest line from previous debates, that Clinton is an establishment candidate who talks but achieves nothing.
I ask a simple question. She's been doing this for 30 years. Why the hell didn't you do it over the last 15, 20 years?
She defended her record by comparing her experience with his. The night he was hosting Celebrity Apprentice, she was making a decision that interrupted his broadcast.
I was in the Situation Room monitoring the raid that brought Osama bin Laden to justice. He was hosting the Celebrity Apprentice.
There was no handshake, no civility remains in this hard-bitten contest. And just in case you were wondering whether Donald Trump might have thought better this morning of his refusal to accept the outcome of the election, well, this is what he said a short time ago in Ohio.
That I will totally accept the results of this great and historic presidential election if I win.
It's a doubling down. from a candidate who has a well-earned reputation. When he's hit, he hits back harder.
Okay, I'm joined now by Jesus Marquez, who's a conservative radio show host here in Vegas. Jesus, what's your impression of this? Huge mistake from Donald Trump to say that he won't accept the outcome of the election.
Well, you know what happens is that Donald Trump is not a politician. He's an outsider. So the way he says things is not what we will expect from a politician.
But he's running for president. There's a certain way that you run for president in the United States.
And I understand that, and that's why, but there's a movement behind Donald Trump. That's why he's doing relatively good in the numbers. I will say this. I believe that if whatever comes, the outcome is in November 8th, I believe that he will accept the result. Now, if we want to go...
He didn't say that on stage last night.
But if we want to go to scrutinize that, let's look at what happened in 2000 with the election, with Democrats and Al Gore did not accept it right away. So after the whole process, in days after the election, is when they actually came back and accepted. So I believe if there's a reason to doubt the election, then it will be a situation like that. But if it's not, they wouldn't be.
Well, let's compare Al Gore and what Donald Trump said last night. Al Gore in 2000, there was a very close vote in Florida.
Correct.
And he used the legal means available to him to challenge the result on the basis of the fact that it was a very close run thing in Florida. Here, before the fact, 3 weeks out from the election, Donald Trump, the Republican candidate, is saying, you know, I'm not sure about these results. I think the system is rigged against me. For that reason, I will, make my decision. I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to hold you in suspense. I will make my decision on the day as to whether or not I'm going to accept the outcome. That's an undemocratic declaration.
But if you really think about it, it will be speculated if we think that he's not going to accept it. He's just saying that he will wait until the results and see what happens, because we don't know if anything's going to happen in terms of being rigged or not.
But it erodes trust, doesn't it, in the democratic system? Why, as a voter? I mean, so many Hispanic Americans work very hard to gain citizenship, to gain the right to vote in the United States. It's offensive to people like them, isn't it, to say, look, your votes, you can cast your vote, but I'm not necessarily going to pay any attention to it.
No, because he's not talking about those people. He's talking about
the system. American voters generally.
Let's look at the media, for example. The media is very clear now they're on the side of Hillary Clinton. They always report only on the Hillary Clinton's favor, and that is if they would report equally time to the mistakes that Hillary Clinton does, with like the corruption in her emails and all that is coming out, I believe that we wouldn't be talking about this. But I believe that Donald Trump, coming November 8th, will accept the result. And that is something that we all agree that, yes, the tradition in America is to transfer power peacefully and without this type of rhetoric. And that is right. I don't support Donald Trump 100% on the way he says things, but I believe that ultimately, at the end of the day, he will accept the results.
What about other language that was used on stage last night? I mean, he defended himself against accusations that he's a misogynist, but then suddenly turned around and called Hillary Clinton a nasty woman at some stage. On immigration, he talked about some bad hombres who needed to be sent back south of the border.
Like I said, he's talking about criminals, and we all agree, and Americans agree, that there's a lot of people that come illegally here to this country and commit acts of criminal acts. Those are the ones he's talking about deporting. He's not talking about deporting 11 million people and families that are not doing any type of those crimes.
Has he reached enough Hispanics to win Nevada?
He has.
Can he win here? It's a critical state for him.
Well, right now, if you look at the polls here in Nevada, they're very close. He's got 33% of Latinos.
Okay.
He doesn't need all Latino. He needs a percentage.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Jesus Marquez, thank you very much for joining us. It's all from now. An incredible 24 hours here, but for now, it's back to you in London, Krish.
Thanks, Kylie.
I've been getting away with it all